Okay, here's something you don't see every day. This is a Redbird TD2 basic aviation training device, BATD. It's most people call it a flight simulator, and that's what it really is. But it doesn't qualify as a full simulator, like you can log all your time in and get your rating in. It's good for initial instruction, logging a few hours for that, teaching people the basics. It's also good for instrument currency, which is what I bought it for. I bought it to keep up on my instrument time. I can set up whatever weather I want. Right now I have a half-mile and 400-foot day in here with moderate rain, which most people would call pretty easy IFR, moderate IFR, I suppose. Half-mile, 400 is not too bad, but it's good to keep sharp on. Plus, I'm teaching my wife to fly. She's flown with me for 30 years, and now thinks that she should learn in case I have a heart attack. So, reason why I chose the TD2, well, the real reason is they're only game in town. No one makes a simulator that I know of that replicates the airplane perfectly that I have chosen and makes it to where you flip a switch, turn it on, and it works. Most of them require a lot of knowledge with Microsoft or Prepar 3D or Prepare, whatever. That's what this runs on. I forget how to pronounce it. But you have to configure it yourself. They sent me this complete kit, ready to go. Very nice aluminum rudder pedals down here. Probably can't see them, but proper controls, Vernier style controls. They twist properly, go in and out. Proper flap switch, proper trim wheel, proper landing gear switch, strobes, lights, landing lights, fuel pump, avionics, a Garmin 530 WAS that actually works, which I'll demonstrate. Got a KP 400 Autopilot that works. And by the way, this 530W has full database, and I get updates every month that keeps me current, so I can practice with current databases. We also have a ADF in case you want to keep up on that. I haven't had a plane with an ADF and I don't know how long, but it's still there, and I suppose I can listen to the radio if I want to. Has one ILS, which is also coupled for WAS approaches, and ADF indicator. Full instrumentation, just like the real airplane. A wing flap indicator, a trim indicator, and also gear indicator up here. So this TD2 can be configured for two airplanes. They call them generic aircraft, but they're really developed for the 172 and the 182 RG. I happen to have a turbo 182 RG, and this simulator is almost dead on in performance for that aircraft. The speeds are a little slower because they designated, or they build it around the normally aspirated version. Mine's a turbo. But other than that, the speeds are all the same, it handles the same, the performance is the same. It's actually pretty darn amazing. So you can select anywhere in the world you want to fly. I happen to set this up for DeKalb County, Indiana. That's where my plane's based. I'm going to practice a 2-7 approach in DeKalb County. I go to Fort Myers a lot too, so I'll set up those approaches and practice them. I'll practice in between approaches in case I want to stop and fuel at an airport I've never landed at before, somewhere in the middle of Georgia or Tennessee or South Carolina in hilly terrain. I can shoot the actual approach here before I hop in the plane. Plus, I'm not beating up my airplane if I want to try some maneuvers I really wouldn't feel comfortable in the plane, like killing the engine at 6,000 feet and spiraling down, or spin recovery, or teaching my wife to land. As anyone that's flown a 182 RG knows, you do not want to land on the nose wheel. So it's a great way to teach someone new. You can pause the simulation at any time while you're training, stop and say, hey, here's what's going wrong. Let's talk about it, instead of in the airplane, which makes it a horrible classroom. The airplane's a horrible classroom. This is a great way to teach the basics, get the feel for the speed, handling, and then put them in the real thing. So what I'll do is I'll do a normal takeoff out of 2-7 here, and do an approach back to 2-7, and again, half-mile visibility, 400-foot ceiling. Let's see how it does. So I'm going to do it just like the real deal and go through the checklist here. So I have my cabin doors and windows are closed. My parking brake is set. Flight controls are free and correct. I'll do a full box. Flight instruments set. 880 feet, 29.92. I'm using standard barometric pressure today. Haven't spooled up the engine yet to get the vacuum for this for the attitude indicator to come on, so can't check that. Fuel selector is on both. Mixture rich. So we're going to go ahead and start the engine now. So I'm going to bring the master on. I'm going to bring the tail beacon on. I'm going to bring the avionics on just so you can see. Usually I wouldn't turn the avionics on until I start the engine, but see that all pops up. And throttle is back, propellers forward. And we are clear. Then I got the magneto switch over here with starter, so I'm going to go ahead and go both start. Fired up, manifold pressure coming up, or came up, RPM come up, and we have oil pressure coming into the green, so engine's running good. My attitude indicator has come alive. My vacuum is also in the green, so and I know that's hard to see from where you're at. I'm going to assume that I've been received an IFR clearance out of Fort Wayne, and they've given me a squawk code of 3435. So I've entered 3435. My initial altitude is going to be 3,000 feet. I'm dialing 3,000 feet into the autopilot. So those are set. I'm going to go ahead and do a run up. I'm going to bring the engine up to 1700 RPM. And do a mag check. 100 RPM drop, or 50 RPM drop. And we have a good mag track. Go ahead and cycle the prop once. Good prop cycle. Drop in oil pressure, drop in manifold pressure on the, or rising manifold pressure also. So we're good there. Okay, elevator and rudder trim to neutral. This does have electric trim. The indicator's moving here. I'm going to put it for takeoff. I'm going to use flaps up. Now it says to set radios. Well, I might as well go ahead and have my approach put in. So I'm going to hit direct to, and my airport is K. And use this just like the 530. G, W, B, DeKalb County, enter, activate. So I'm going direct. Well, I might as well go ahead and put in the approach while I'm on the ground, since I'm going to be taking IFR and coming. I don't have to set it while I'm in the air. So I'll go ahead and hit procedure, select approach, and I want to select the RNAV 27, which is the GPS. And I want, let me switch here to my iPad. I'm going to do a left-hand turn after takeoff, which my initial would be CUJ-B. That's Kilo, Uniform, Juliet, Bravo, India. So I scroll to CUJ-G, hit enter, and I'll go ahead and activate it. And that gives me a desired track of 118 to CUJ-G. So I'll keep that in mind. Hey, after I take off, 118, but what I want right now is I want a west heading. I want to track straight off in IFR. I don't want to turn as soon as I get in the soup. I want to climb out straight till I have sufficient altitude. So west heading for now, but I'll dial in the 118 for CUJ-G. There's 118. So I have my radios now set. The autopilot is off, but armed and ready. The beacon is on. I'm going to adjust the throttle friction a little to hold my throttle. And that's it. So, I'm going to put away the checklist. This is the actual checklist out of my airplane. I'm going to strap on my ForeFlight with approach plates, just like I would in the real plane. Before I take off, oh, one thing I would have done in my plane too, on my other checklist, I would have leaned my plane on the ground. And I would lean it till it almost dies, to where when I advance this throttle, it won't want to run. Right there is where I want it on the ground. Too many people run their airplanes rich on the ground, fouls your plugs, wastes fuel. You really want to aggressively lean on the ground, and the carbureted 0540s are no exception. So, but we're ready for takeoff. So we're going to use full mixture, propeller in, double check. Might as well bring on my nav lights, my landing light, and bring my strobe lights on also. So everything's on. We're clear, ready to go. I've only flown this thing once, so don't laugh too much. It's you know, it does fly a lot like the real plane, but then again, it doesn't. It's a different feel. So enjoy the show here. So we're going to take off. Again, we always prepare. Where are we going? Well, we're going to head first, straight ahead to 500 feet. Then we're going to turn on course to roughly 118. I'll reset it, the direct to Coogee, once I get in the air. I may or may not use the autopilot. Let's see how I do first. I have it right here in case I need it. But we're going to go ahead and take off here. Double check instruments. Vacuum's good. Oil temperature's good. Ammeter's good. Full fuel. No warning lights. So we're good to go. So let's do a takeoff here and head to Coogee. Then advance the throttle slowly. In my plane, I would stop right here because it's a turbo with a manual controller, but in this plane, I'm going to go full throttle. So full throttle sets, power set, no warning lights, green gauges. Airspeed is alive, 40, 50, 60. I'm going to rotate here. Up we go. Going to pitch for about 80 knots. I got a positive rate of ascent. Gear is coming up. There's 80 knots. Now I'm going to pitch for 90. Verified. Gear up. Gauges are in the green. About 85 knots right now. I'll lower the nose just a little bit. Coming up on 1,300 feet. At about 1,500, I'm going to make my initial turn. I'm climbing a little too high. I'm going to lower the nose just a bit. And now I'm going to make a turn to the left. And I'm going to dial this to about, probably 130. On full power in the climb. Okay. That's telling me I'm within 1,000 foot of my altitude. I'm going to reset or hit direct to Coogee, activate. It's going to redraw my line for me. Notice I'm climbing full power. That's pretty standard. Just climb full power. It's the best thing you can do for your engine. So it looks like I want about a 113 track. So I'll dial in 113. Put that in over here too and see how that works. Of course, I'm going to follow my needle. I did plug in for some gusty winds today. We have a quartering headwind, 10 knots gusting to 15 knots. Shallow my climb a little bit, coming up on altitude. Reduce a little power as I level off. So we are above the cloud deck right now, and I know you can't see all three screens, but I need a little right correction. Coming up on 3,000, gauges are in the green, no warning lights. Leveling 3,000 on course, pretty much have the needle centered, so I'm going to hit autopilot, nav, altitude hold. Before I let go of the controls or do anything, I'm going to verify that the autopilot is truly in command of this airplane. Too many people hit buttons, and then they start looking at stuff, and before they know it, they're in a spiral somewhere. So the autopilot definitely has engaged. It's holding 3,000, it's nav, and it's tracking. I'm going to do my first power reduction. I'm going to bring it back to about 21 inches. Just to show you, I'll move the propeller. I usually leave it at 2400 every time I fly the plane, but I can use the vernier style control. Turn it back. Now we're doing 2400. While I'm at it, I might as well lean. I'm going to aggressively lean to peak EGT, which was right there. I'll reach it in about 150 degrees. About 100 degrees. That puts us at about, looks like about 11 gallons per hour. So, 3,000 feet, 11 gallons per hour, leaned out, 2,300, 21 inches of manifold pressure. I could leave it full throttle and fly this approach full throttle. The 182 lands at about 55 knots though, and approach speeds I usually like to use right around 90 to 100 on the approach, so this plane won't land. You try to put it on the ground at 80 knots, you'll land on the nose wheel. So this is a plane that, talk about the 182 a little bit while the autopilot's flying. The Turbo 182 is an amazing plane. Simple carbureted, simple manual wastegate controller. Very little to go wrong, so very easy to fly. Pretty fast, 180 knots up at 17,000 on 14 gallons an hour, and to land in about 900 foot and take off in about 1,150 foot. So it does a lot really good. Carries the load well, doesn't have any problem with CG at all. So very, very cheap to insure as well, and pretty dirt simple maintenance. So here we're going along again. The autopilot has us nailed in at 3,000. Tracking on course. Kuji is 1 minute and 53 seconds away, and I know you can't see that. Our ground speed is 139 knots, and we even have a true airspeed indicator. I can dial in our altitude and temperature here. And we're truing out at about 130 knots. So we have a 10-knot tailwind, which would be about right with the wind that I've programmed into the machine before the flight. I can scroll out or scroll in on the 530. I can go out and see the whole country, all the airspace. It operates just like the real machine. I can dial in ADF. I can hit ident on the transponder, lose my mind. I also have a DME, which is kind of nice. So I have the DME, and that's hooked in also to the nav side of the 530W. Like I said, this is just like the real machine. So it's automatically going to make the turn. As you can see, it's turning. Since it's a WASP GPS, it's anticipating the turn. We're coming around. Don't have to do this, but I like to keep on top of things, so our desired track now is 005. Whoops, wrong one. 005, so I'm going to dial that in. And I'll go ahead and put my heading bug on it too, just for reference. Now, we have wind. So it's going to have to correct for wind. We're not going to head 005. It's going to correct for that. We'll see how it does. It's intercepting that leg right now. So we're on the Kuji to Jujig leg, which Jujig will be my initial fix. my second initial fix technically. Then, or intermediate fix, whatever you want. The next fix will be HIFBA, which is our final approach fix. And that's where our landing gear should come down, our flap should come in, and our final power reduction. So, it's tracking. It's close to the magenta line here. Gauges are in the green. Looking good, no failures, no warnings. At this point, I'll go ahead and back off a little power. I'm going to pull it back to 19 inches. So I've pulled back to 19. I can also twist this and do it slowly. There's exactly 19 now. We're 1.6 miles from Jujig, 45 seconds. It's saying it's going to turn in 6 seconds. It's flashing here just like your 530. Turn in 3, 2, 1. The autopilot now is going to turn because it's transitioned to its next leg, which is a 275 track. Again, I don't have to change this, but I'll put this on 275. I'll put my heading bug also. And this is where we'll see our wind correction. And there's my cell phone going off, which would be the distraction you would get if you were truly flying IFR and you've descended down to 3,000 foot now, and guess what? Someone's calling you. So, we are 2 minutes and 47 seconds, 110 knots is our ground speed. We have that headwind now instead of a tailwind. And it's a quartering headwind. So the wind is 330 at 10 knots, gusting 15. By the way, I should have my feet on the rudder pedals here the whole time. As you can see here, we are getting some gusting. We're getting the ball going left and the wind's gusting back and forth. So now it's time to get serious. Let's check our fuel is on. Fuel quantity's good. Everything's running good. I've left my landing light on the whole time, just in the pattern for, or not in the pattern, in the area for safety. Lights are on. We're above freezing, so I never turned my pitot heat on. But let's say we were in freezing, so I'm going to go ahead and flip the pitot heat on. We're 1 minute 54 from HIFBA, which again is our final fix. We have gear speed already. Gear speed is 140. We are doing 115 gear speed, so we're well below gear speed. So I'm going to pull back a little power, bring it back to about 16 inches. That's a really nice setting for shooting an approach of 16 inches. I'm going to leave the mixture lean, leave the prop where it's at. I'm getting my indication, getting my glide slope indication. Speed is good. I'm going to throw the landing gear down. Landing gear coming down. I have 3 red, 3 green now. So I have 3 green. Oh, got to set to approach. Don't miss that. So we've set to approach. Let's see if it goes downhill. I'm going to put in 1 notch of flaps. We're below initial flap speed of 110 knots. The autopilot is reading GS, which means glide slope capture. It is now controlling the airplane. It has started us down at 500 feet per minute. It has the glide slope nailed. It has the localizer nailed. Speed is 100 knots. We're still 39 seconds from HIFBA. We were a little high at 3,000. HIFBA is actually 2,500 is where the glide slope intercept is. I'm going to go ahead and dial our autopilot down to my decision height, the warning in the autopilot anyway, and that's going to be roughly 1,100 feet. So we're crossing 2,500 now. Glide slope's active, our glide slope's nailed, localizer's nailed. We're 3 minutes now from the end of the runway. 100 knots, 2,400 feet. Our Our decision height is 1,200 or 1,130 feet, which is what I've set also into Autopilot. Again, looking, gauges are in the green. 2,300 feet descending. Nice 500 foot per minute is giving us on this setting of 16 inches. Now, my manifold pressure is increasing because I'm descending. So I got to reduce the manifold pressure a little bit. Turn it back down to 16.
Altitude.
So I'm 1,000 foot from decision height. Just got my warning from my Autopilot altitude warning. Wing flaps are 10 degrees. Gear is down. I've just went into the cloud deck. I'm a little fast, so I'm going to reduce down to 15 inches now. Using the twist control. There's 15 inches. Still have almost right at 95 knots. There's 14 inches, which is 90 knots. It's auto trimming automatically for the reduction in power. We are crossing 1,500. Our decision height is 1,130. 1 minute and 15 seconds from the end of the runway, 85 knots ground speed. No warning lights. We are in landing configuration. Gear is down. Not touching the mixture, not touching anything. 1,300. 1,200 or 1,300. 1,250. 1,200. Autopilot coming off.
Autopilot.
It's raining pretty hard now. Just going to hold that glide slope. There's some trees. And I've missed the runway. I'm going to go around. Gear up. Flaps set. Full rich. Prop forward. I've turned too far to the north.
Leaving altitude.
I wasn't expecting to miss. I think I actually set the, I'll have to look, I have a feeling I set that up for a 1/4 mile visibility. So we have good altitude now. Get back on course here. Okay. So now we're on top. Tell you what, just for fun, I missed going one way. Let's try it the other way. I'm going to dial in procedure, select approach, enter. And this is something I would never do in real life, but I'm going to do a downwind. Didn't work going the right way. Let's try downwind in the bad weather. RNAV runway 9. And I will want, tell you what I'm going to do is let the autopilot fly here. I'm going to engage 2,500 feet on this heading. So I'm going to dial in the heading. Autopilot. 2,500. Heading. And altitude select. So, altitude select has been set, heading of 330, and I engaged it at about 2650, so that's fine. I'm going to go back here. Let's look at runway 9. So runway 9, I'm going to go, let's see, I am heading to the northeast, so I will fly, I'm going to get my bearings here, I want Puzru, so I'm going to dial in Puzru, enter, activate. Well, it's basically telling me I want about a 290, so 290, I'll hit nav. Let the autopilot go there. On a 290 heading. Like I said, I think I dialed in a quarter mile or a tenth of a mile instead of 2 miles or something. Maybe I put 0.2 in, but I wasn't seeing anything, and I wouldn't have, of course, went down that low in the plane. But see the advantage of a simulator there? So, no animals were harmed in the filming of this video, including humans. So we're here at 2,600 feet. And if we look at the big picture, we're heading to Puzru, Dovecue, Kizfu, and then the runway. And again, I don't know what this is going to look like. So if I don't make it, I'm going to crash it just to show what that looks like, I guess. But I guess we're going to try a near 0-0 landing. And to make it even more difficult, we're going to do a quartering tailwind. So that ought to be interesting. And if this airplane, it does not have a carburetor heat. That's the one thing it's missing. I would have checked the carburetor heat. I'll give you a little hint. On any aircraft with carburetor heat, especially a turbo, don't check it on the ground. You're bypassing the air filter and you suck FOD up into the engine. Not as bad in a normally aspirated, but if you suck even the slightest thing into your turbine of your turbo, you just bought yourself a $3,000 turbo and it's going to spread all that stuff through your engine. So it's just dumb to run your carburetor heat on the ground. Okay, I'm pulling back to 23 inches. I'll lean it out. Again, I would have done all this had I been flying. Another thing I would have done is put the flaps up. I left them at 10 degrees on the go around. Had I been doing my checklist, I would have had them all the way up. So gear up, flap up. It's doing auto trim. Gauge is in the green. Properly leaned out. No warning lights. Looking good. Gonna double look at my approach plate here. 3,000 foot till Dovecue, and then 2,500 foot to Kizfu. And I'll just let the autopilot intercept about halfway in between. We'll see if we can find the runway this time. There's another thing we can do, and I don't want to do it because it'll change this flight scenario. There's a keyboard behind here. Well, I'll grab it since we're just flying. On this keyboard, we can do a bunch of things. We can end this flight. We can do zero visibility. Right now, if I hit zero visibility, I blink everything out. The problem is it erases my previously set visibility and cloud heights. When I go out of visibility, it puts you into VFR. It's to teach VFR students, if they fly into a cloud, you know, that you can pull them back out of it. I could fail the engine, I could fail the electrical system, I could fail the altimeter, fail the pitot, I could fail the static port, fail the vacuum, fail the autopilot, all that. And when I'm done, I can analyze the flight. I can also pause the flight by hitting F12. If I did that right now, it'd pause me. So those are the things you can do. This is nice if you're an instructor and you're trying to teach your student. So we're making our turn from Puzzroo to Doveque. And again, that's a 185, so I'll just dial that in. And of course, if I had more modern equipment, it would automatically do that on a glass panel for me. Which is interesting. I went with this so I can teach on this. I think it's always good to teach on steam gauges. I'm going to teach my wife on this, but my plane goes in for a full dining. My plane's actually equipped very much like this. It's going in for a full dining setup with dining autopilot, the whole bit. And learn on this, learn on the more difficult, transition to the easier. I know that sounds backwards, but I always think it's better to learn hard. That's the way I learn. I think too many people are too soft anymore on their learning. So I'm going to pull back the power. Go back to 20 inches. So we're a minute from Doveque. Again, Doveque is our initial fix, or an intermediate fix, whichever you prefer to call it. And our decision height on this is 1182, so it's a little higher, almost 1200. So I'll put in 1200 as once we start downhill, I'll put 1200 in for our reminder. We're now turning to Kisfu, which is a 095, and that'll be our final in, but we have a quartering tailwind from the left now. We have to keep that in mind. The wind is 330. Definitely something you wouldn't want to do is do a quartering tailwind landing, but hey, what great practice, right? Can't hurt anything in the simulator. So it's intercepting. I'm going to dial this in a little bit. It's intercepting our final approach course. Needle's still to the left. It's coming to the right. About a 20-degree interception angle there. The autopilot's shallowing it out. And of course, on the miss before, I would have hit the OBS button and flown the miss, which is about 5 miles out straight to a hold. I would have contacted Fort Wayne Approach, told them I was on a miss. They would have cleared me for an approach, and they certainly wouldn't have cleared me for the 9, but we're just having fun, right? Okay, time to get serious. I'm going to put the keyboard down. Gauges are in the green, no warning lights. Airspeed 120. I'm going to slow down to 16 inches of manifold pressure. Actually, I'm going to go 15. Got a tailwind. So I want the least amount of ground speed I can have. Plane doesn't stall until 42 knots dirty, so we're in no danger of stalling. Okay, we're 1 minute from Kisfu. It has the localizer portion nailed. Everything's still on. We're ready for landing configuration other than the gear. (2,600), 100 knots. Localizer nailed. Mixture will be left. Prop will be left. Landing gear to go. Again, the way I fly is when the glide slope starts coming in, my gear goes down with it. So when the glide slope goes down, the gear goes down, and then the flaps go down if I have flap speed. Here comes the glide slope coming down. Gear goes down. Check all the gauges again, but I do not take my hand off the switch until I have 3 green. I have 3 green. Flaps, 10 degrees. Positive indication of flaps, 10 degrees. 15 inches of manifold pressure. 2,600. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I talk too much. I forgot to hit glide slope. We've already went through the glide slope though, so it isn't going to catch it. So I'm going to hand fly this.
Autopilot.
So, since I was screwing around talking to you instead of doing what I should have been doing, I get to fly this now by hand. So, I'm going to need to get back on course laterally. This is going to be ugly. Quartering tailwind, no autopilot. And let's get that in. Set for 1,200 feet. Got my 500 foot per minute. I'm a dot high on the glide slope. That's fine. I can burn that off. Okay, I got my lateral about right now.
Altitude.
Okay, I want a little down trip. Here we are. Quartering tailwind, 10 to 15 knots. Quarter mile or less visibility. 400 foot ceiling. Pretty bad day. And moderate rain. Okay, I'm a dot and a half high. I'm going to lower this nose a little more. Get a little more power off. There we are. Drifting. This wind's blowing me around a little bit. Got to get back on course. 1,500. There we are, back on the glide slope. And a little left, of course, correct to the right. I'm a dot, half dot low, so I get that. 1,200. And again, I'm going to land this regardless. We'll see what happens. Probably won't be pretty. 1,100. I should have seen the ground by now. I'm now 100 foot above the ground. I am now 50 foot or 100 still. I'm going to go full flaps. I'm going to take the power off. I'm landing.
Leaving altitude.
There's the runway right there. Yeah, this definitely ain't a mile. Hold on. So quartering tailwind. Hold on. Hold on, Bessie. On the ground. There you go. Now, let's get the heck off the runway before someone else runs us over coming the other way, right? Find our first taxiway. My gosh, visibility's horrid. And there's the end of 27. Oop. There's the taxiway. So, interesting. Flaps up. Landing gear stays down. Verified flaps are up. Pitot heat off. Strobes off. Nav off. Landing light off. Leave the beacon on as long as the engine's running. Kill the engine. Kill the avionics. Kill the master. shut off the mags, and have a very, very stiff drink after flying like that. Again, I would have never landed runway 9 with quartering tailwind. I wanted to see if I could do it, and I did. Not gracefully, but we're alive. I would have went quicker on the miss on 2.7. I wanted to demonstrate it for you, and guess what? I wasn't able to demonstrate it. But what a great system to learn on. It flies just like the real plane. It feels like it. Of course, the controls don't feel exactly the same, but you got to admit the pitch feels heavy just like the Skylane does. Everything works pretty good. Don't know what else to say. They build a good simulator. It's very, very fun to fly. It's even it's fun to teach VFR on it because you can pause the flight. And if you have any questions, put them down there. And I'm probably going to actually, I am a CFI, so I'm probably going to actually start giving instruction on this machine. And I probably won't use my 182 to teach people just because it's a turbo and it's really nice and I really don't want it beat up. But we can teach people in this and transition them, because I can also make this again. I can start this as a 172. It just ignores the landing gear and the propeller. So I can teach, it'll reconfigure as a 172, all the speeds and everything. And you can teach as a 172 or a 182. So hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time.